soulmate, my beloved. Are you recording?
Yeah.
Okay. See, he just yelled at me. Yes. We can't communicate at all. See, he's going to have to edit all this out now. Just made you more work. All right. Welcome, everyone. I'm Lynn Woodland, and I'm the author of a couple of books about miracles. The first one is called Holding a Butterfly, and the second one is called The Breakthrough Point, a spiritual activist guide to thriving in a modern world. And even though that one I finished it about 7 years ago, I think it's more relevant today than it was then. It's both a pretty deep dive into evolving metaphysics as they were taught back in the 80s, the way they're basically still taught. And it's also a pretty deep dive in looking at why the world has gotten so crazy and tying it into this evolutionary leap humanity is in the process of making. So in that an awful people lately have been having a lot of the weight of the world hanging on them. That's a book I really recommend. It might give a little bit more of a positive spin to it all and give a little bit more of an idea of what we can do just with our consciousness to transform the world around us. We're not powerless. Anyway, the Miracles course got its name because I've spent about 40 years studying what gives rise to miraculous experience, studying and teaching miracles. And I've seen a whole lot of miracles, so, crazy stuff, that is supposed to be not possible. And I've really done a deep dive into, well, how can normal people find those same experiences as part of Mr. Tech Guy is helping me out here. Okay, thank you. And that's what we're about. It's a year-long program. Every week is something different. We don't focus solely on let's manifest a result. It really is about increasing our spiritual skills and spiritual power so that we just become more effective, healthy, and joyful humans and more on purpose. I work with a seasonal context, working with each season to give some context to the spiritual work that we're doing. And that makes kind of a nice blueprint for the whole of human growth experience, from birth to death to transformation, rebirth. And that brings us to where we are now, really in the still deep time of winter. Maybe not for us down south here. Some of us are down south, like me. I'm in Florida. A lot of you here tonight, I know, are up north. Florida, the northern states are still pretty wintry. And when we're in that February time of year, it really is still about introspection, hibernation, energy turned inward. And of course, February is not just about the heart of winter. It's the season of fluffy hearts and flowers and commercialized romance. And whether we love Valentine's Day and go all warm and fuzzy inside when it comes around, or find it kind of a hate reminder of our less than perfect relationship status, for better or worse, there's a lot of minds focused on love this month. And while that whole candy heart overlay of Valentine's Day is certainly a cultural rather than seasonal phenomenon, I think it's kind of well suited for late winter. After all, when the weather and the shorter days still keep us indoors more, we tend to find ourselves in close quarters with our fellow humans. And when our attention turns within, there we are with our own hearts. And love and relatedness either bloom or we become very aware of their lack. So these times when collective attention is turned in a particular direction, they create a wave-like energy, a real, wave of thought. Now it's all about romance and love, and with a little bit of focused intention, we can catch a wave like that and let it take us higher in some way. Or if we go unconscious, it can catch us unaware and just toss us around like, love. It can do that to us too. So our work this month is to take that candy heart version of love and raise it up a few rungs to improve the quality of love and relatedness in our lives. And we're going to touch on a lot of different realms, from just the purely psychological, behavioral to the vibrational, spiritual. This week, we're going to be more down in our behaviors, our patterns, our core beliefs that we learn so early in life. And in relationship, it's so easy to feel at the mercy of other people's behavior. Think of how often you have felt, even fleetingly, everything would be just fine if only my husband in there changed. If only he would change, my life would be perfect. We tend to think that way so often, like if only they would change. And the more intimate the relationship, the more power it has to really jerk our chain. Yet, and really think about this, what we get in life or don't get, be it the acknowledgement that we're not getting at work or the reciprocity we don't feel with our friends, or the support we feel is missing in our marriage. All those things are directly related to what we believe life is going to throw at us. Not necessarily what we want or hope or think should happen, but what we've learned probably at a very, very, very early age to expect. The way people treat us now reflects deep core beliefs about how deserving we think we are, and what we believe is possible, and how we've learned to expect life to work. And it probably matches how we were treated as a child and how we saw adults treat each other when we were very young. And for the most part, we operate from these beliefs very unconsciously, automatically. And of course, that makes our beliefs much harder to recognize, let alone change. But they can be changed. And especially once we figure out what they are, when we realize what they are, that in and of itself diffuses a lot of their power. The simplest way to unearth these deep core beliefs is to take a look at what kind of relationship experiences we're attracting. The quality and the nature of our interactions just offer us a lot of feedback about what we're calling to ourselves through those unconscious beliefs and our behaviors and just our emanations, what we are vibrating to the world. In fact, there have been studies, of people who have been mugged or raped or, just attacked. And their picture will be shown next to pictures of people who have never had those experiences. And they'll be shown to, people who have done violence to others. And they're asked to just see what person, you would go to do some damage to. And Sheldon, we're trying to mute you, honey. I can't seem to do it. Oh, there we go. Gotcha. Um, so there is something that we just put out, vibrationally, body language, emotionally, in so many ways that are not very conscious, that tell the world how to treat us. We're going to do some work tonight to help clarify some of the roots of repeating relationship patterns by working with some of these core beliefs. So you need pen and paper for this. So if you don't have pen and paper, run get it real quick, 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 quick. Get your pen and paper. By the way, Barbara, I haven't seen you in a gazillion years. It's nice to see you, honey. Welcome. All right. So just relax for a moment and just take a couple deep breaths. Let your attention just go inside for a moment. And just reflect on past and present relationship experiences, especially the most emotionally charged ones. Paying particular attention to any hurtful, repeating patterns. And when something comes to you, write down 1 to several simple sentences describing any repeating relationship pattern that you don't really want anymore. For example, I'll give a few examples. This might be one. I'm always the giver in my relationships. Or my friends just aren't there for me when I need them. Or romantic relationships start out great, but then I feel kind of suffocated. Or then I get abandoned, one or the other. But, that's what I mean. Keep them short, simple. Don't tell the whole novel-length version of your last, terrible breakup. Just pull out the pattern. Describe it in a simple sentence. And now assume that whatever experiences you've had reflect something about your belief system. For example, if you tend to have, say, loving, supportive relationships with women and disappointing relationships with men, it's not because of the way men are. It's because on some deep level, you believe that men are going to treat you differently than women. And subsequently, you attract people into your who will play along with these beliefs. They will do your dance with you. And when we project all the blame on other people, we usually go on to create similar experiences with new players. Now, one way to break this cycle is by using a bad experience to show you valuable information about your core beliefs, the patterns that are baked into you that you are still creating your life from. And once you've uncovered what you believe, you can change it. So just making the shift from, well, this just happens to me, to, well, this keeps happening because I somehow learned to expect it. I expect it to happen, so that's why it keeps happening. Just that shift uses some of the power of previously unconscious beliefs. So look at what you wrote and assume that these statements aren't just what you've experienced. They are what you believe. And a simple way to start changing these beliefs is to turn them into positive affirmations. And I'm guessing most of you know what an affirmation is. It's a statement of what we now want to become true, stated in the present tense, as though it already is true. And the idea is that by writing and or repeating an affirmation over and over, it can begin to reprogram our unconscious beliefs about reality. You know, in much the same way that we might reprogram a computer by feeding in different information. Now, affirmations aren't the end-all and be-all that they were made out to be by early New Thought teachers. You know, at one time, that's all you got. You got do an affirmation for this, an affirmation for that, and write them over and over and over and over. Just keep doing your affirmations, and your life will totally change. Well, you know, there's sometimes a little more to it, but they can be very handy tools at times. You know, where we give attention is what we keep calling into our lives. So as you give more time and attention to a new thought, then you've previously given to limiting self-talk and some of that unconscious or barely conscious self-talk, that little voice in your head that constantly reminds you why your relationships never work, why you can't have what you want, that people always leave, need too much, can't be trusted, whatever, on and on and on. You know, as you just more intentionally give attention to a different thought, you will start to create new scenarios. And we will explore affirmation work in greater depth in one of our classes next month, because I think even though we don't, they're not really a foundation block of the kind of work we do here, I think it's important to know your way around an affirmation. How to create a good one, how to work with them, maybe a more fun way to work with them than just writing them and writing them and writing them and writing them. So we'll get into that. But for this exercise, create an affirmation for each of your unwanted belief statements that counters it. And to do that, as much as possible, use very similar language and style. For example, I can't anyone to do as good a job as I do. That might turn into, there are now many competent, trustworthy people in my life who help me in many ways. You want to keep your affirmation as short and sweet as the original statement. You want it to be easy to remember. You don't want it to be a whole paragraph of flowery, prayerful language. Just keep it really sweet, to the point, very similar to the original statement in style. Another example might be, relationships start out great, but then I feel suffocated, overwhelmed, like I don't have space. That might turn into, relationships start out great and then keep getting better and better. That tech guy writing a note to me, he just wrote a really sweet little note to me. It's relationship month. My first great role model of a really perfect marriage was a gay couple from way back when they couldn't even be married, but they'd been together forever. And I asked my friend Tim, what is the secret to your great relationship? And he said, well, I never know what's going to happen between us, but we have learned that things always get better. So we've just come to expect. We don't know what's going to happen, but we know it's going to be wonderfully better. I thought, wow, what a great relationship expectation. It was a powerful model for me. So as you turn these belief statements into affirmative statements, just look at your list every day this week. Just keep it in mind. If there's one that has a particular zing for you, you might consider writing it 15 times a day for a week, or posting it where you can really see it often, or just saying it to yourself over and over as you fall asleep at night. Sometimes people will use prayer beads to do their affirmations. So, just play with it this week in whatever way, kind of helps you feel it. Um, I want to talk a little bit about and if you have questions about this or need help, save it to the end. As I said, I'll just stay with you all as long as you need. Because our group's a little bit bigger right now than it has been. I want everybody to get whatever you need from this work. I want to talk a little bit about the dynamics of partnership, because the more intimate the relationship, the more we do plug into unconscious knee-jerk patterns of behavior, and we fall into certain dances with our partner. You make a familiar move and they react with an equally familiar move, and it goes on, and it can be a little downward spiraling sometimes. And even if you don't like the dance, you just keep stepping in the same pattern, triggering the same response every time from the other person. And there's some dances that are very particular to individual relationships, but there are some that are nearly universal. They're common to a lot of us. And that's one that I want to talk about tonight. I want to talk a little bit about the abandonment engulfment dance. And this particular dynamic tends to come up I would say, in most intimate partner relationships at some point or another, but in other kinds of relationships too. Um, and if you really found, your perfect partner is like great, you might not have so much of that, but you might have seen it in your history. Um, and you know, the way this comes up is between the two of you. One partner will enact, to one degree or another, a fear of being left, that abandonment fear, or a fear of being swallowed up, not having space, not being able to meet the other person's needs, or even both at different times in the relationship. And those of us who are especially afraid of abandonment hold a core belief that we're essentially incomplete, that other people have something we really need in order to be happy. And in extreme cases, we feel that our very survival depends on getting something from another person. And then we put a lot of energy into trying to get this from our partner. And typically, we would be the ones wanting more engagement in a relationship. I just want more and more and more. I just can never get enough of you. Now, those of us who primarily act from a fear of engulfment hold a core belief that we're complete as we are. We're very self-contained and self-sufficient. And that becoming intimate with another means we lose a little bit of what we have. There's a little bit of sacrifice in connecting intimately with another. And when we have this fear of being swallowed up, we tend to feel that others are just eventually going to want more from us than we have to give. And so we would typically be the ones backing up in a relationship. And while some of us may recognize our recurring pattern as being on one side of this dynamic or the other, like, yes, I'm always the one, the needy one, or I'm always the kind of suffocated one, often it's not so black and white. We may see ourselves as insecure, needy, and wanting more from a disengaged partner in one relationship. And in another, be the one who's perpetually stepping back and feeling a bit overwhelmed by a partner's expectations. And we might even go back and forth in the same relationship, as I mentioned. And what's important, it's not so important to diagnose it ourselves, like, oh yeah, I'm an abandonment person or a disengagement person. What's more important is to catch ourselves in the midst of this dance, wherever we happen to be in it. Ah, sorry about that. Since I had my throat a few years ago, I have a lot of dry throat issues, and if I talk too much, I might have the occasional coughing fit. When I get so excited and I just can't stop talking, it's like, ah. Thank you for your patience. And to tech guy, I'll do my best to mute myself. I need one more minute. All right. Yeah, it's important to catch ourselves wherever we see ourselves in that particular dance. Because if we just leave it unchecked, the pattern can really have a spiraling effect. One person steps forward with a desire for more involvement, and the other person steps back further. And the first partner feels this as abandonment and tries a little harder to engage. And then the second partner goes, ah, and may even may even give up on the relationship. But at the very least, emotionally disengage more and more. Now, if you find happening in any of your intimate or even your not so intimate relationships, say with a boss who you're just waiting for their approval, you just can't get it, you can't get it, you can't get it. And it's really, triggering something in you. The most effective way to stop the pattern is through a combination of inner work to change the belief and behavioral changes to break that automatic, reactive way of interacting that arises from that belief. So I'm going to go through two sets of steps. And the first set of steps is for working with abandonment fears. Like when you find yourself just wanting more and more and more from someone who's, just disengaged and not given it to you. And the second step is for working with engulfment fears if you're on the other side of that. And they're very different instructions. Now, you don't have to write any of this down because you can get to them in the written materials. And Bill, something I might appreciate from you is to get the code for this week to access all the materials. I don't know if I've collected that yet. So here we go. This first set of steps will help when you find yourself feeling insecure and just working harder and harder in a relationship with a person who's becoming increasingly disengaged. Step one. Step one is to simply create the inner experience of being loved. And that means, bringing to mind that empty place inside of you that feels like it can only be filled by someone else. And just begin to transform that emptiness. I think a good way to do that is to cultivate an inner partner of some sort. And if you're looking for, say, approval from an employer or a mentor or something, and you're not getting it, then it would be the same thing. Create your inner mentor, your inner teacher, your inner employer. Which is kind of like an inner parent. And this is meant to be an imagined spiritual being rather than somebody you know. You don't want to do this with a face and a name to it, because that gets to be a little bit of, psychic manipulation. People don't respond to that well. Keep it spiritual, not literally a physical person, and because it's not a human being, this being that you're imagining can embody the ideal of your perfect partner, perfect other. And this being is able to know you absolutely, accept, appreciate, and respect you just as you are, love you unconditionally, and offer support in all the ways you most need it. So play in your imagination until you've created just the perfect being. Keep sending them back if they're not quite there. The one who feels like your perfect other. If it's about a romantic relationship, really have that be a romantic image. Your perfect partner. And use all of your senses to make this imagined experience very immediate and vivid, so that you really begin to feel what it's like to be loved in just the way you most want. Loved, appreciated, heard, respected, honored, cherished, all those things, understood. And hold the intention that as you have this experience of being loved, you're changing old patterns, and attracting to yourself all that you've created within, because you're literally creating the cellular memory and the vibration of, this is what I've experienced in life. This is what I now expect from life. So you start calling that to you. It's kind of like, if we don't have that inner vibration, even if someone in our life is capable of loving us that way, we keep the door to that kind of love. We keep it closed, kind of locked shut. We may have other doors open, like ignore me, feed me crumbs, but don't just really come all the way in and adore me. Because we've locked that door. But as we imagine what that feels like, really with every cell of our being, then we start to vibrate at that level, and that door just starts to open. And it may be that we get it from somebody who's already in our life. And it may be that that person who's already in our life just, fades away kind of quickly, easily, and to let somebody else show up and come in that door. Because when we imagine something so vividly that it feels real, we do give it creative energy. We just become very magnetic. All right, step 2 for abandonment fears. Focus on yourself instead of this human other. Do the inner work with your ideal other, but with the real human other, focus on yourself instead of them. When insecurity and fear are driving you to just hold on tighter, tighter, which often includes giving more, engaging more. How you doing? You bored? What you thinking? What are you wearing? Can I bring you some, something, mama? Can I give you a little we'll often get into being big givers, when we're actually wanting more, because it's something we're doing to get more attention from that other. So instead of doing all these attention-getting things, no matter how much you want to, don't. Just don't. Even if your instincts are telling you to to reach out more, to give more, to text more, to more, more, more. This is the time to do just the opposite. Stop, pull back a bit from the relationship, not in an emotionally charged way, like, I'm not talking to you anymore. Not in that way. It's just about a shift in attention. Because when I'm not talking to you anymore, attention is still on you, but it's like, I want you to notice that I'm not noticing you anymore. You haven't really shifted. So instead, turn your full attention toward yourself, and however much energy you had been giving to this other, direct at least the same amount toward loving yourself. And that could be in small ways, just spend a little more time on the inner just described with, being loved by your ideal person, your ideal spiritual being. It could be, just giving yourself time to take a walk, to read a book, to call a friend, to take yourself out to a movie matinee just because you can. You really want to see it. You don't know anyone who likes this kind of movie. Buy yourself some popcorn, just treat yourself some way. Now, if you've been in a really long-term pattern of letting another person be the primary focus of your attention, then stepping back and loving yourself might need to take an equally significant form. It might mean undertaking some new program of physical or emotional healing, or going back to school, or joining a support group, or some other means of reinventing yourself, joining a spiritual group, something that is about lifting yourself up. Not only does this stepping back serve you, it also helps your partner break out of the dance as well. Because as you step back, it gives your partner space to remember, that there's a lot about you that they really like. They can remember their attraction to you and their desire to engage, which, they're less able to feel if, you're on them like this all the time. If they're just, trying for a little space. And when, people who are on the other side of that dance are often struggling to keep up and feeling like they are not good enough because they can't meet, your needs. So doing the inner and outer work of turning your attention away from the relationship while cultivating the inner experience of love, that can have a magical effect. It can really be like a little love spell, making you seem a lot more interesting and attractive to maybe a somewhat blasé partner. And, and if they're still not interested, then they're just not to you. They're not worth your time. They're not for you. And as I was saying, then this work is going to make you magnetic to a more suitable partner who will adore you in the style to which you are now willing to be adored. This only works, however, if you really turn your attention to your own happiness and wholeness. If you're just going through the motions of stepping back in a relationship while you're still obsessing night and day on the other person, nothing really has changed. We're also connected to one another, that psychically we kind of know those things. We feel them. It gets transmitted no matter how hard we try to disguise it. But the more we feel happy and whole and at peace with ourselves, not dependent on another person, the more attractive we become, not just to this other person, but to all kinds of people. So here's step 3 of this set of instructions. Balance giving to your partner with giving to yourself. Whenever you find yourself measuring how much you've given to your partner compared to how they've given to you, and you imagine that you come up short, that's the time to shift your focus, to compare how much you've given to your partner with how much you've given to yourself. And you'll probably find that, you've come up short, still come up short. So take whatever action needed to give to yourself at least as much as you're giving out to your partner. So here, last but not least, step 4. When you're not feeling empty or needy, you can't do this in a needy place or it doesn't work. Practice giving to your partner in a different way. Those of us with abandonment fears are often big givers, maybe giving time and attention, doing their partner than they expect to receive back. And, we'll keep giving even to a partner who isn't reciprocating. And the more fearful we feel, the more we give. And what tends to be withheld, however, is the one gift their partner would probably appreciate the most, which is the gift of acceptance and appreciation for how they're right now, as opposed to how they could be if they just changed, how they are right now. The nature of this abandonment engulfment dance is that one person fears that what they give will never be enough, while the other partner fears they'll never receive enough to feel full. And as you practice these previous steps of giving more to yourself, needing less from your partner, you'll be better able to give to your partner in a way that truly supports them and nourishes them, instead of asking for more from your partner or giving more in the hope that your partner will reciprocate, which can kind of feel a little bit manipulative, when it's given that way. So instead, practice acknowledging what you've already received from your partner. Give the gift of appreciation, and do this really authentically when you're in a place of feeling balanced and full, so it doesn't feel manipulative. Let your partner know what they've done that you really do appreciate. And keep it simple, less is more when you're giving to a partner who fears engulfment. Oh, and hold back any inclination toward mushy, unconditional martyr love that's basically saying, I adore you just the way you are, no matter how much you disappoint me. No. It might be, I really appreciate that you always think to take out the garbage. I really appreciate that you're the one who scoops out the kitty litter boxes every morning. I really, I just don't tell you that enough. That kind of appreciation that's real. Not like, I love you no matter what, even though you so deeply disappoint me. Save that. And just start to notice the little acts of kindness your partner does for you, and just say thank you. Practice saying thank you more. Now, if you find that there truly is nothing to appreciate about your partner the way they are, that's kind of a little bit of a red flag that maybe this isn't a relationship to preserve. Maybe you've grown attached to the relationship you want rather than the one you have, and it's time to let it go. If you've never been the first one to let go of a relationship in your whole life, maybe when you see some of those red flags, that would be a real growth step, to be the first to step back and say bye-bye. So here is the next set of steps, and this is for breaking out of the engulfment side of this dance. It's to help you when you find yourself in a pattern of pulling back further and further from a relationship, or when you feel that your partner wants more and more from you, and you're starting drained and exhausted, like you just don't have it to give. So step one, it's of a similar vein, but a very different from the last set of steps. But it is the inner work. Create the inner experience of positive interdependence so that you begin working with your core beliefs by calling into mind the part of you that feels emptied by other people. People with this belief tend to feel it's easier to be self-sufficient and often have a lot of trouble even imagining that sustenance and support and assistance and synergy can come from other people without there being too many strings and complications attached. Like, how can I get what I need without having to pay too high a price? So this is exactly what you need to imagine. Think about what it would be like to receive something you really need and want from another person. And imagine being surrounded by people as competent as you, people who can take care of you as well as you take care of you, and feel what it would be like together with another person. And instead of the usual give and take and compromise, you experience a synergy in which both of you feel more complete, more empowered, and have more of what you need and want by being together than you have separately. I know a real couple who didn't get together till they were in their 50s. The woman had been married before. The man had never been married and was a loner, a self-described loner, and he felt that he never wanted to be married because it would be too much work having another person around all the time. And this couple is the most joined at the hip couple I have ever flipping met. They've been together for decades. They share one cell phone, one phone between the two of them. You never talk to one of them at a time. You always talk to the both of them. They never take a job. They're semi-retired. They're retired, but they take odd jobs. But they never take a job unless it's one they can do together. Everything in their life is together. And what the man says about this is that until he met her, he never wanted to have another person around that much. But being with her, get this, is easier than being alone. The first time he ever felt that in your life. So that's the kind of thing to start imagining, even if you've never experienced it. Imagination can take us anywhere we've never experienced. Imagine being with people and having it being easier than doing it all yourself. And with no strings, absolutely no strings. It may feel like a stretch of imagination, but the more you can experience it inwardly, the more you begin to attract this experience in your actual relationships. So step 2, clear boundaries. Clarify your own boundaries. Get clear about your boundaries and limits, what they are. What are you willing to give? What are you not? I suggest doing this in writing, where you make a list of ways you truly enjoy giving to your partner, as well as the ways you don't mind giving. It doesn't really cost you that much. Then make another list of what you've given that you really didn't want to. You said yes when you really didn't want to. And you might have some revelations. Just the process of writing might draw more and more and more truth into mind. So, pay attention where you didn't say no, but wanted to. Now, step 3, after you've clarified, what you do want to give and what you don't, step 3 is direct communication. Because people with engulfment fears will often use disengagement, in other words, just stepping back, saying less, shutting down, being less present in the place of direct communication. So instead of using this familiar, indirect, more passive-aggressive communication, what's needed is to communicate in words what you don't want to do and what space you need for yourself. And here's the kicker, become equally clear to identify the limits to your limits. In other words, instead of saying or silently enacting the message, I need space, I need space. Be very clear about how much space you need and when you'll be back. As in, I need a day to myself, or I need a weekend to myself, or I need an hour to myself. It might be with your partner who you live with, and you just say, I come home after work, I need to just go into a room by myself for an hour, just decompress, just, be by myself, and then I'll be available to you. That part is really important. So claiming the space you need and at the same time committing to coming back is very different from being neither fully present nor full on, which might be a more familiar pattern. Communicating when you'll be back also helps to alleviate your partner's fears, so they're less likely to react with more intensive engulfing behaviors. They'll know what you need, and it'll be something they can give you rather than something you have to take from them. And honoring your own boundaries this way makes it a whole lot easier to keep your commitment to come back and be available to your partner. And because clear communication has made the time apart less frightening for your partner, they'll be a lot less demanding. Win-win. The dance gets a lot more fun. So step 4 is to practice receiving. And now this has to be at a time when your engulfment fears aren't surfacing, when you're feeling balanced and at peace. Find something you're willing to ask for and receive from your partner, something other than space. This needs to be something you'd actually like to receive rather than forcing yourself to submit to whatever your partner wants to give. Because, that can happen. Like, let me give you a massage for 3 hours, and your partner's like, I really don't like that. But okay, you can go. No, not that kind of receiving. And for a lot of engulfment fear people, this can be a challenging assignment. It means getting in touch with wants and needs that may have gone completely unrecognized. And it's also a big step out of the comfort zone to practice asking for what you want, as opposed to the far more familiar practice of getting what you need and, getting for yourself. Yet learning to ask and receive and to enjoy the process is really a crucial healing step. A starting place for this might be to simply ask your partner to be your ally in the healing process of learning how to receive. And, if you're at a loss as to what you could ask your partner, consider asking for feedback. Ask your partner to share with you what they appreciate about you and what things you've done that mean a lot to them. That could be a really good step, because the ultimate goal for people on either side of this dance is to learn interdependence in relationship. Now, there's more to this lesson, and it's a longer lesson. So I want to really encourage you to go to the written materials and review all of it, because some of the important part of this lesson is knowing when it is important to, leave a relationship. Also, there's a piece about forgiveness and a whole meditation on forgiveness that I think is important. Holding on to hurts and resentment and wounds from the past, it doesn't teach another person a lesson. It only hurts us. It's very detrimental to our health, our happiness, our well-being. It's a very important step. So go look at that material. The way you get to the written materials is to go to my website, lynnwoodland.com, go to the Miracles course option on the menu bar, click on it. It'll take to a drop-down menu showing the months of the year. We're in February, and we're in the first week of February. And you click on that drop-down link. It'll take you to a hidden page that requires a code. The code for this week is 17 capital Q capital U, 17 Queen. And Bill, if you look at the chat, he actually has the link that you can just cut and paste right into your browser and then type in the code. That code is 17QU. And it is 9:05, so we've gone a little bit over. But I want to invite, first off, remember, whatever spiritual center first got you here is where you send a donation, and it's important. It's important. It kind of keeps the love going forward. And that, as we will find out in Prosperity Month, is really important. This is my giving forward, and giving to the spiritual center that was your first connection here is also really important. I want to, for those of you who have to sign off and say goodnight, I love you, I bless you, feel free to go at any point. For anyone who didn't get a reading and would like one, or just has a question or sharing, because this is a lot of deep content. Anything left about relationships, anything at all, this is your time. So just unmute yourself and jump in.
Yeah. So I had a question.